Deputy Gannon.
Could I request that I potentially use my time to ask a question, receive an answer, and then move on to ask another question and receive an answer?
Yeah, I don't see any difficulty. The Minister, I'm sure, is happy with that. Are you, Minister? Yeah,
Brilliant. Thank you, Minister, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us this evening. Minister, I want to ask you about recommendation 5 of the framework to reopen schools. I'll read it out just so you know. For those larger classes which remain difficult to accommodate, consider a live streaming of that class to another room or area in the school. Minister, I've contacted a number of schools, both in my own constituency and around Dublin, to ask them about these overflow classrooms, and I've been met with some sense of surprise that this is even a consideration. Minister, could I ask if your department has done an analysis of many schools actually have capacity for overflow classrooms? I want you, if you could speak to the requirements for supervision to take place in these overflow classrooms, and if you think schools will have enough teachers on standby to go into a class of 4 and 5 students, and if the technology is there to achieve this aim. I ask because of a meeting of the Joint Managerial Board today of over 600 school principals. This was the #1 issue that was raised, and when principals raised the issue that they don't have overflow classrooms, they were told, well, then maybe you can get a what were they told? Maybe you can get a porta cabins. So is it the understanding from the department that where these overflow classrooms don't exist, schools have to go off and get porta cabins that they can then stream live into? And also, if the Minister is aware that there is currently a shortage of school tables from suppliers by which we can put in the single tables that are involved in the roadmap. Thank you.
And Tara.
Thank you, Deputy. Just in relation to the larger classes and indeed reconfiguration of school space, you will be aware, as I previously mentioned, the €75 million that has been dispensed into the schools to arrive next week in terms of how they can reconfigure. And that's the first option for schools, that they would reconfigure classroom space or other spaces, whether it's general purpose areas or assembly areas or whatever, and the necessary space that is required would be provided. In relation to the issue of live streaming, you will appreciate that there's a number of options being made available. And indeed, could I say to you, Deputy, that the various proposals that are there are outlined as a consequence of engagement with the partners in education as options for different schools to work through. And this was one of the proposals that's been put on the table, where some schools who might feel it is suitable to them, or where they might feel that it meets their needs, that it is an option that is there. However, to say to you in relation to your... so not every school will take it up, not every school will require it, but it is an option that's there. And there is the autonomy for each school to decide on their own as to what meets their needs best. In relation to the aspect of supervision, and if I would be confident that the supervision is available for any measures of that nature, you will be aware that there is a substantial investment in supervision for second-level schools, where additional hours are being made available to the schools to use as necessary at different times, whether it's in terms of at mornings times as they arrive, break times, or perhaps even in a situation of this nature. It depends. But the school does have the discretion in terms of supervision.
Thanks, Minister. I didn't really get an answer in relation to the porta cabins, but I'm going to move on to the issue of teacher recruitment. And that's okay, Minister, because I actually don't have that much time. In relation to the 1,000 new teachers that were allocated for post-secondary schools, so 1,000 new teachers, which would be very welcome. We've got 723 secondary schools in this country. Does the Minister believe that that will be enough if there's a second wave? I also want to touch on the recruitment process for those 1,000 teachers. There is currently no advertisement pertaining this funding for new teachers just yet. When will the advertisement happen for the recruitment of these 1,000 teachers? The Minister will be aware that there's a 2-week window into where these advertisements have to take place. Then there's an interview process. When does the Minister believe these teachers will be ready to start teaching in class? And what should happen in the meantime? Because I don't believe they'll be ready in 4 weeks, given the short time frame we have in. As part of that new recruitment is also very welcome reallocation of 123 career guidance counsellors for 723 schools. How are the allocation of career guidance counsellors going to be given to those schools? How can a school be fortunate enough to get one of those career guidance counsellors?
Anna.
The 1,000 teachers is actually 1,080, and I'd like to have the opportunity actually to explain to you, Deputy, how that actually will work. Each school will look at their own need. They will look at the hours that are available in that teaching post, which would be 22 hours. They will decide what is needed within the school. So, for example, maybe an additional hours of 8 hours are needed for French, and an additional 10 hours are used for physics, or whatever the case might be. It will not necessarily mean that it's a single person that's in the school. The hours will be divided to meet the needs of the school at any given time. So I have absolute confidence that every principal will make the best judgment as regards what best use needs to be made of those 22 hours. In some instances it may be a single person, but I would expect from my own experience it will actually be a number of people who will cover the needs that are required within the school. In terms of the sourcing of the teachers, again, I have every confidence. For example, many of them, in my experience, are already in the school system. We have 1,300 job sharers, and for the first time we are raising the bar on the number of hours that job sharers can work. They can extend their time. Equally so, we have a number of part-timers who are already working in the schools, and again, their hours can be increased. We have more than 2,000 who are currently registered with the Teaching Council, who are not currently working. Many of the schools already know who their substitutes are. They will have identified them. I have every confidence that they can do it, and I think this is a great boon and a great addition to the second level schools to have posts of that nature coming on stream. In relation to the guidance counsellors, the 120 figure restores the numbers to pre-2011. It's a full restoration of the guidance counselling hours. And again, I think that's hugely positive, because it is all tied up with the very strong resources that we're putting into well-being within the schools for our young people. And equally so, as I have the opportunity to say, there are very substantial resources also being put in place for the entire school community. And I think that's also a very positive move. And indeed, I know, Deputy, it's something that you are particularly interested in yourself. Thank you.
Minister, I just want to touch on the lead worker representative role, which is a particularly interesting position that's being catered for in the roadmap. It's also, I'd imagine, be quite a difficult position. Can you tell us a little bit about the lead worker representative role, the person who will be in charge of all of the COVID-related activities and precautions taking place in the school? How does this person be identified? My understanding is that they can be any member of the school faculty. They have to be elected by consensus within the school. There is no actual financial incentive for a person taking on this role. There's only one training session, I'm told. And can I ask, is that person personally liable within the role if guidelines are not followed? And also, what happens to a school if this is a voluntary position? What happens to the school if nobody takes up this position in a school? Does that default then to the management of the school?
Anna.
The lead worker representative is an important role within the school. It's a recognition of the need for coordination, really, of COVID-19 measures within the school. It's equally a recognition that there needs to be a number of personnel who are to the fore. Obviously, you will have the principal, the deputy principal, you will have senior members of staff. I know myself from personal experience that it will be a whole school engagement, it will be a whole school effort. But in relation to the lead worker representative, there will be reduced hours available for the individual who takes up that role. I have every confidence that presently position is being mooted within the schools. It's like any other position that is taken up within the schools. Where there is a need as identified within the school, somebody will be put in place. Obviously, it will be a voluntary position in that respect in terms of the person taking it up. But it's a hugely important role. It's an acknowledgement as well of the I suppose the need to streamline how the schools will operate, and in tandem with that as well, can I say there's a further resource going into the schools to support the rollout of COVID-19 measures in advance of school opening, and that's the aid, the individual who will be as an aid for the next number of weeks in the school as well. So there's a number of measures, okay, and as I say, the lead worker representative is being compensated by means of a reduced timetable within the school.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree there. Minister, I have only a short amount of time left, so I'll ask a very quick question. This year's Leaving Cert cohort who are going to arrive back in school on September the 7th, If they're seeking advice, you know yourself from being in schools that when the Leaving Cert results come out, all of these students come back. Some are in a state of emotional distress, some are seeking extra guidance, supports. Will those students, when they get the results on September 7th, be allowed back into schools to talk to their teachers, to ask questions about their grading? Will there be guidelines there to support them, given all of the other responsibilities that are going to be at schools on that particular stage? So what would be your advice to students on September the 7th looking for advice from their schools on their grades?
Just a brief reply, Minister, because the time is elapsed.
I would suggest, obviously, there will be the normal supports that are in place in terms of helpline and all of that. The students will receive their results via the portal. But I also know, and I say this from personal experience, schools will always be open to support, to be with, to walk with, and to walk before and behind their students. And I have every confidence that schools will want to play a role. But in the first instance, as I say, the results will go via the portal to the students themselves. But I have every confidence that schools will want to be there in a supportive role also.